Moving to our big focus on India Decides tonight. This is what elections should be fought and won on. Ending hunger is ultimately a test of good governance. And today in this special report, Sunetra Chaudhary brings you details from the ministry meant to oversee this on how some states have achieved a remarkable turnaround in ending malnutrition amongst children and others have failed miserably. The biggest shame is that in Delhi, India's capital, nearly 50% of children are malnourished. That's below states considered backward like Chhattisgarh. In fact, only Bihar and Orissa are worse than Delhi. The biggest turnarounds are in Gujarat, politically significant since the Congress has attacked Narendra Modi on his state's record, and in Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. These figures are part of the CAG report into the Integrated Child Development Scheme. Sunetra Chaudhary has the story.
I'm going to say the statistic a couple of times just to drive it home. 50% of children in India's capital go to bed hungry. This horrific revelation through a CAG report accessed by NDTV shows that 1 out of every 2 children in Delhi is malnourished. This high 50% child malnutrition rate makes Delhi one of the worst of all states in India. Delhi, in fact, ranks just 27th out of entire 29 states. That's, if you look at it, just worse than Chhattisgarh. That's worse than, it's really in a bad situation. Only Bihar and Odisha are worse than Delhi. What are the reasons for the high incidence of malnourished children in Delhi, especially when states like Madhya Pradesh, states like Gujarat and Maharashtra have managed to turn it around? They had bad malnutrition rates, they've just changed it. Have a look at what's happening in Madhya Pradesh, where it used to be 50%, now it's down to 28.5%. That's not the only state. Even Gujarat has managed to turn it around. If you look at the rates, it's 70% in 2007, and it's now, that's the latest figures right now, it's now down to 38.7%. In fact, another state, Maharashtra, again, a fairly dramatic improvement from 45% in 2007 to 25%. That can be done. Delhi has gone down since 2007, but it's still 50%. When questioned by NDTV, Delhi government officials raised doubts about the veracity of these figures from 2011. But could that be an excuse? Because it is provided by their own government. The Women and Child Development Ministry has collected all the figures together. Food activists say Delhi's malnourishment is due to the high incidence of infection in its congested areas. Perhaps one of the most shocking aspects of the story is just the absurd reasons for not helping children get better nourishment. In some places, they didn't have growth charts to monitor, and in some areas, they didn't even have a baby weighing machine. Back to you.
Well, the startling new details from Sunetra Chaudhary, very important because it's shown that some states have made a huge turnaround, and that's good news. But other states, and Delhi, India's national capital, needs to do much, much more. Well, joining me on that tonight, I'm joined by Harsh Mandar. Now, of course, he's also a Supreme Court Commissioner, a Special Commissioner of the Supreme Court on the right to food. Also joining me are the politicians. I'm joined from the Congress from Andhra Pradesh, which again has a pretty bad record in fighting malnutrition according to these figures, is Madhu Yakshi Gaud. I'm also joined by Pinaki Mishra from Orissa. Now, Orissa, of course, has traditionally been backward and it hasn't done as well as it should have. The success story is, of course, Gujarat, and that's politically significant because we know that Narendra Modi has been in the eye of a storm over his remarks on malnutrition and how it's caused by Gujarati women wanting to keep their figures. But the success story here of Gujarat's turnaround. Also with me tonight is Prasun Joshi. Now, he's a citizen of India who has come into tackling this malnutrition problem with what he can bring to the table. And that, of course, is his writing and his help with the Prime Minister's campaign against malnutrition. Prasun Joshi, I want to actually begin with you because you've studied this problem. You've been part of the Prime Minister's campaign. On one level, there's good news. We've seen most states have improved quite dramatically. And the state you're from, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, have all shown dramatic turnarounds. But in the heart of India, in a sense, in Delhi, where the Prime Minister said it's a national shame, the figures are still terrible. What would you say?
See, I would not like to comment about the figures because the figures are something which I'm just hearing right now. And we also had figures before we started this campaign. And it was how I looked at the problem was more of a nationwide problem,
right?
A problem which is a problem of this country, and I did not see it in segments. Definitely, those are important because we need to make on-ground efforts to correct those. But as a communication expert, when I was brought on to the table, it was really shocking to see that almost every second child of this country is malnourished. Now, when we read the problem, it from a distant, did not see the impact of it. But more you get into the problem, you see what it means. It means that half the population is going to be underproductive. It means the GDP we talk about is not going to be the GDP, because these are the people who are going to be the people who are going to be adults tomorrow and going to be part of nation building.
Right.
So it was really a shocking sort of figure. And when we looked at the problem, it is not one-fold, it's many-fold. It's of course attempts by the government, but at the same time many myths which are attached with malnutrition. I mean, nutrition is a very complex subject. It was not like I had worked earlier on polio, where you had a solution that, if you give polio drops, you can cure this. Here it is like, since the child is conceived till the time, child is 2-year-old, there is a constant care is required to the mother and the child, and a very mindset needs to change towards what nutrition is all about. I think a lot of myths around it. So we tackle a lot of that in this campaign which we currently running.
It's a complex, it's a manifold problem, and we can't reduce it to state versus state, which we shouldn't. But is it an issue, and I think that's a key point, is it an issue about good governance? Is this something which elections should be fought and lost on? Well, let me go across first to Jai Narayan Vyas, of course, of the Gujarat BJP. Mr. Vyas, for you, these figures are a sign that when Narendra Modi talks about good governance, it does extend to malnutrition as well, because the Congress has attacked the Gujarat for its malnutrition records.
I would feel happy that Gujarat is doing well as far as malnutrition issue is concerned. We have been successful by focusing on this issue, and the results are speaking for themselves. So to that extent, if you say that this is because of the interventions from the government, I think it's gratifying. But let me add to that. This is a very complex issue. It should not be looked in isolation. This covers the child right from the conception to a certain age. That is one thing. But further, beyond that, even the research has shown that the eating habits, as you grow from even the low income group to upper income groups, the food basket relatively gets lesser share of the funds. Not only that, the preferences and the composition of the food basket changes. So you might be eating pizza or patsas, which may be more in terms of money, but as far as the nourishment is concerned, it may not contribute much. So there are various issues which need to be addressed, and more importantly, the communication, making awareness spread amongst the mother, children, everybody alike, and then attacking this issue from all angles, I think can only bring the result.
Sure, but I don't think that pizza pasta argument is really relevant here, because I think when we talk of malnourished children, we're talking more in rural areas, and I don't think it's about urban areas and of children of under 2 really actually eating that. But let me get Madhu Yakshi Gowden on a point which I think the opposition and many... Yes.
I want to make a point here. Let me add also.
Yes.
Say the fast getting urbanized also is again a problem. The villages, the kind of weedicides and pesticides that we have been using for the benefit of the crops,
yes,
have totally destroyed some of the vegetables, leafy vegetables which were available for the rural children free of cost.
But
now you don't see tandalja, you don't see chil, you don't see these leafy vegetables.